Hey Ryan, can you hear me okay? I think you're still muted, so I can't hear you. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Awesome. I have one quick little thing to fix. My little name is extra. Had to use the backup. All
We're
right.
being a little extra on a Tuesday.
Oh, yeah. And my forehead is still sunburnt, and we are ready to go. All right. So, what's up, everyone? We have an incredible guest joining us here today, Evelyn Zermeño, right?
There you go. Yeah, that's close. That's awesome.
Evelyn is an expert in the world of business banking and commercial lending. Evelyn has helped countless small businesses, startups, and entrepreneurs secure the funding they need to grow and thrive. In this episode, we're going to dive deep into the current landscape of business loans and financing options for companies of all sizes and business models. Evelyn will share her invaluable insights on various types of loans out there, requirements to qualify, standard underwriting practices lenders use, and how the lending landscape has shifted, especially after the 2020 pandemic. Whether you're an established business or just starting out, this is an absolute must listen. A quick intro and word from our sponsors. Finance for individuals and businesses began with a vision, a community where like minded people could gather and share their passions, experience, and knowledge for a brighter future. Our mission is to foster growth, development, and push everyone forward. We believe everyone has the potential to succeed, and we're here to support that journey. Join our community of leaders, visionaries as we learn, grow, and build a brighter future. For those on other platforms, this originated as a Facebook group and we plan on keeping it here. Join us at facebook.com/groups/finance for individuals and businesses. We'll see you there. All right, back to the show. Evelyn's real world expertise in banking and commercial lending is truly invaluable. You'll gain a comprehensive understanding of the business loan process from start to finish. Evelyn, welcome. We're thrilled to have you here. Introduce yourself us Introduce yourself a little and give us a quick idea on what business banking is.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Ryan, so much for inviting me. I know it's been a while. We were making plans around this for a while, and so we
Right?
finally got to it. So I appreciate that. Yes, so I've been in banking for over 10 years. I started as a part time teller, didn't really think that I would stick with banking as long as I have. But if you talk to every banker out there, they'll probably who's been in the industry for quite some time will probably tell you the same thing is, banking just kind of landed in their lap and they fell in love with it and stuck with it and made a big difference and impact a career, whatever it is out of it. So yeah, I've been banking for over 10 years, different levels of expertise. I've worked in various roles, anywhere from branch management to small business lending to commercial lending to treasury. So there's really not a role that I have not done in banking. So I'm excited to be on here and share what I know so far.
That's awesome. So you said everyone kind of falls into it whenever they're in the banking industry. How did you fall into it?
Well, so at the time I was a DACA recipient. So I have a very interesting personal story, and those who follow me on Facebook kind of have an idea of what it is, not in detail too much. Some of my closest friends do, and obviously family. But at the time, I was on DACA and I was looking for an opportunity to get into the professional world. And so I lived in a town called Rowlett. Those who are from Rowlett and went to high school with me know what Rowlett is or where it is. And so there was a local bank who was hiring a part-time teller at the time, and I had absolutely no banking experience, finance experience at all whatsoever. And so it was a challenge for me in some ways going into a world that I knew absolutely nothing about, did not have any other resources. My parents really didn't have the resources as well. But there was a manager on site who saw a lot of potential, saw that I was a very hard worker, that I was eager to learn. And so he gave me an opportunity as a part-time teller. So, which is one of the most hardest jobs in the banking industry. You think it'd be dealing with, commercial to corporate sized businesses, but actually starting from the ground level really teaches you a lot into it. So that's how I started. I really wanted to go to school for fashion, and found out at the time that school was very expensive. And because of my personal situation, I couldn't qualify for scholarships. I couldn't get government assistance, and school was very expensive. I had to come out of pocket. And so got a lot of closed doors on me from the very start. And so when I came back to banking, I had a great mentor who said, you work for a multi-trillion dollar company. The banking industry is a multi-trillion dollar industry. You can really make something out of yourself here. So something clicked. Now, at the time, I had to figure out, okay, am I more operations? Am I more behind the scenes? Or am I, more servicing led, more sales led? So I ended up learning everything that I had to learn regarding the lending part of it and the servicing part of banking and, the relationship building aspect of it. And then got promoted within the banking industry about 7 times. And so I really worked my way up all the way to a senior VP of Treasury and Business Development for a previous bank. And now I'm VP of Business Banking covering DFW and 2 markets additionally that are Greenville and Tyler. So it's been a long-winded journey. I know that was a long-winded answer, but just to answer it in a nutshell, it just kind of stuck with me, and so that's why I'm
Yeah.
here.
No, for sure. And I think you definitely do have an interesting journey, and it's cool to see how much success you've had considering your journey. But honestly, I think it's made you persevere that much more. So it's always cool to see people rise to the occasion, especially whenever they started out just looking for an opportunity. Um, do you mind
Absolutely.
sharing
Yeah.
a little bit about your story here?
Sure. Yeah. And thank you for asking. And you're so right about, I think it always, no matter what title, fancy title they give you, or no matter what doors you walk in, or the people you're in front of, it, I think my heart's always so filled with gratitude, and always takes me back to that humbling moment when someone did give me an opportunity. So I think it grounds me, and it helps me meet business owners where they're at, whether they're starting out, or if they need guidance or didn't have the resources. But you're right on that comment. So my personal story. So my parents are from Mexico. I was born in Mexico myself. I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco. So my parents came here with nothing but the clothes on their back. Unfortunately, there was a corrupt community leader who, in politics, that emptied out lots of people's business, a lot of people's bank accounts, took properties, things of that, and that's very normal in foreign countries. And so when that happened, my parents had no option but to come to the United States, to live the American dream, to start fresh. And, they've always, with having a family, it was more of a survival tactic at the time. And so when they came here, not knowing the language, literally nothing but the clothes on their back, I came with them. And, so I came here as a baby, and I grew up in the United States, living, all the American dream and having all the benefits that we do and access to all the benefits that we have. But I always knew that I was different because I was born somewhere else, and my parents did a phenomenal job at keeping our traditions, keeping our culture alive, a lot of our values. So kudos to them. And I saw them go from nothing to building businesses of their own. And, we lived in East Dallas for a while, then we moved to Garland, and then they bought a house in Rowlett. So just seeing their hard work and their sacrifices, again, not knowing the language, to completely new country to them, and just seeing the resilience behind what they accomplished. I think that was such an inspiration. So for me, I knew I wanted more for my life. I didn't want to be another statistic. I didn't want to be stuck in that, woe is me. I didn't have the resources mindset. I really wanted to break through that and do better for myself. And now that I have a little one, she'll be 7 this year. I can see how that drive just kind of multiplies even more, so I've got big shoes to fill. And so I think that's what keeps me motivated and grinding as hard as I do.
For sure. Do you find yourself pushing yourself harder to impress your parents or impress your kiddo? Not necessarily impress, but
Yeah,
um, kind of just, do you find your parents or your kiddo more motivation?
that's
Don't
a
get me
great
wrong,
question.
both are very powerful.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a little bit of both. Sometimes when I'm kind of stuck and I don't know how to approach a certain scenario, I can hear my very conservative, strong, prideful dad Mexican voice in my head saying, keep pushing and, speak up for yourself, things like that. So I think they have a lot of influence as to, why I push as hard as I do. I think my daughter, though, she makes me more patient. I have, as a mother, you become nurturing, and so you become more empathetic. You learn to slow down. So it's almost like she balances both aspects of it. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah,
The earlier in my corporate career, I always tried to make my dad proud. He passed away like mid-20s, so that motivation kind of went away. Except still try and make him proud. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry about that, but yes, the
It's
waves of
part of
life.
life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure, for sure. But so business banking. Tell me about kind of a more interesting project that you were working on recently, maybe with a client, the kind of situation that they were in, and how you helped them. Because there's a lot of different ways that commercial banking or business banking come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say for me, there's many different scenarios. Everyone's situation is very different. I think that's why I love being in business banking and I love doing what I do because you really get to witness many different walks of life, different passions, what motivates people of different sizes, right? So, the most recent one that I can think of was someone that had started off with selling tacos out of their backyard, and this was like 6, 10 years ago. And their dream was to always obviously grow and expand. And they were doing so well and they were catering at some point. And so eventually they ended up moving into a food truck. Well, at the beginning of it, they had no idea, hey, how do I get formalized as a business? What's the best route to take? Do I establish myself as an LLC? Am I more of a sole proprietorship? Am I going to go the S corp route? So I think being in business banking, as long as I have and seeing different situations, I can guide in that way, some sort. Now, we also have people that we partner with throughout the community, like CPAs and good bookkeepers and good tax advisors that we can connect them with to give them a little bit more detail around that. But as far as helping them from a capital standpoint, I think with business owners, you get to a point where your receivables and payables, they're growing and they're at a pace that you can't necessarily keep up with because as your revenue grows, your expenses as well. And so when that happens, you need a little bit of help with cash flow, you need help with capital and things of that sort. So with that is, okay, I'm ready for some capital. I'm ready for some help with cash flow. Can you get me there? And it's like, all right, let's take a little bit of a step back. Are you formalized as a business? Have you built your business credit? Have you built a solid relationship with the bank? What are you doing from a financial standpoint Do you have a financial organization plan in place? Have you talked to these experts like the CPAs and the bookkeepers? And so what I like to do is when they're starting out is really paint an action plan and talk them through why it's important to have that before going to a bank and proposing for some capital.
Right. Definitely want to note that I was moving a little bit, and I appreciate you continuing to roll through the punches.
Oh, you're
Um,
good.
no, I think it's really important to really understand the landscape where it was and kind of where it's going. There's been a handful of shifts, especially around 2020 in the business banking world, I know that you were talking about. Do you want to touch on those, like what the differences between then and now?
The differences between what, Ryan? Sorry, you were cutting off.
Uh, Sorry, the business banking,
The differences between
like
business.
credit score, things getting restricted and everything.
Yeah, so I think we all went through a very interesting time in COVID. I mean, as a world, and the whole world itself, right? That threw
Right.
off just the checks and balances of the finance world. But if you're talking about just some of the criterias or what it takes to get approved for a business loan, I can definitely talk through those differences. So back then, it was a lot easier. We had a more consistent trend as to who qualified. Every bank liked to see liquidity. So did you have cash on hand to be able to pay back the banks? Do you have collateral? So do you own any real estate? Yeah, free and clear, even better. Do you have equipment that could be used as collateral, depending on what industry you're in? Another one was cash flow. If you are netting pretty much on a positive trend every month, we look at that as well. Some banks were looking at brokerage accounts. Perhaps you didn't have a lot in liquidity, cash on hand, but you had some in your brokerage account. So we're looking at that as well. And so now with COVID, shifting the world, banks had to shift as well. The market shifted as well. And so everyone obviously became a lot more conservative. If banks were conservative in the past, they were a little bit more as far as getting people qualified. And I think just the way that the market has trended in the past few years, people are just trying to keep up. Business owners are trying to keep up, especially the small to mid businesses. They're trying to keep up with the inflation. They're trying to keep up with just lack of resources. And so we're starting to see that, yes, people are a lot more eager to get some capital, but the options are a little bit more limited. You've got banks, you've got angel investors, you've got SBA brokers, but it's a lot harder to get people across the finish line now. And so right now, bankers, myself, I want to get the deal done. I'm not, I'm not the enemy at this point. I want you to get approved. I want to get you through the finish line. Trust me, that's how I get paid. So,
Mhm.
uh, but it's a matter of walking through that and talking through what that looks like to an underwriter. The underwriters ultimately make the decision per se, and of course we've got backup as sales personnel and as leaders, but really, is the bank willing to take a risk is what we look at. So we look at many different avenues, we look at many different options. And if at the end of the day it's, hey, not yet, but let's get you, some more resources or people that you can talk to get you there, then that's the conversation that we have to have.
Right. What kind of resources are you finding yourself kind of handing out more often?
Right now, the best resources that I have provided are probably credit specialists, educators, people that really sit down and educate people on what they need to do to keep their credit at a healthy standing, even in a world where we are depending a lot more on our credit cards, on loans to kind of get us
Mhm.
through the day by day. And then really good bookkeepers that don't just use automatic systems and um, pretty much trust that those automatic systems are not going to make a mistake, but that they're overlooking, their expenses, that they're overlooking their financials, and they're really educating business owners on, what payables are, what receivables are, the best way to do that, why their expenses are high, and guiding them as to what they need to do to lower that, what the best tax strategies are, things of that sort. And so, I would say that best advice for business owners right now is make sure that the experts that you partner with, like your bookkeepers, like your credit educators and specialists, like your bankers, really do understand what they talk about, and they are really credible, because it makes a difference as to how you're going to succeed as a business owner. It makes a difference on how your business thrives if you understand how those mechanics work.
Do credit advisors for businesses and consumers, are they usually the same person, or are they completely different? Because I know credit for
Mhm.
consumers, I know a handful of those people.
Yeah, I know some of them offer help on the consumer side and business. I know
Mhm.
some of them go a little bit deeper as to what helps out entrepreneurs a lot more. But the ones that I've come across with, they help with both
Yeah.
aspects of it. Yeah. Obviously, the credit life cycle of a business owner is a lot more complex, and
Mhm.
there are a lot more rules behind it, and there are a lot more tips and benefits to it, um, versus consumer. It's pretty basic level. Just make sure you don't use a certain percentage of the lines that you have. Make sure you pay on time. Make sure that you have a long history with the same credit line, the basics, versus a business owner. All right, are you formalized as a business? Have you been transacting under the business? Do you have a solid relationship with the bank where you're not constantly in the negative? Do you have a credit line open under a business LLC or a sole prop? Do you have an EIN established where you're building history under the EIN? So it gets a lot more detailed, a lot more complex. So I would say, if you're going to invest into as a business owner, to partner with a credit specialist, really find someone that really understands the mechanics behind it.
Yeah. I think building that line of credit is pretty important, especially whenever you are a small business, you want to scale up. Establishing that line of credit, especially with one bank, maybe two banks, or something like that, and just kind of get the ball rolling, so your line of credit increases obviously over time, bigger and better projects.
Exactly, exactly. And that's the thing, business owners, entrepreneurs, um, big dreams, right? Big dreams. I saw it with my parents. I've got a business on the side myself. I've seen it, I understand it. But you have to be able to take the small steps. You got to be able to crawl before you walk, per se. So and the banks see that too. Your financial institution, whoever is helping you with capital, they're going to see, okay, were they able to handle that $500 credit limit, that business credit card that earns cash back when they first started? Were they able to handle that correctly, in order for me to give them this $3,000 line of credit, this $5,000 line of credit?
Right.
Because what people don't understand is that, your credit score, your financial history, what you have built under your business name, every track record, that is your walking resume as a business owner. That is pretty much your character description to a bank, to a financial institution, to an angel investor, things like that. One of my favorite shows is Shark Tank. And I love Shark Tank. I can watch Shark Tank all day long. That's one of the shows I don't get tired of.
It's a great show.
And yeah, that in The Office. But Shark Tank is very interesting, and it's helped me as a banker overall as well, because almost the same proposition. It's almost the same proposal and the same ask. You've got a small business owner who has put blood, sweat, and tears into their business. And they need help because they've got, now contracts with Walmart. They've got contracts with their clients, and so they need help. And that's usually the most repetitive story that you hear on Shark Tank. And so I like when they go into the history of how they got started and the why behind what they do, because it really demonstrates character, right? And so that's what bankers want to hear as well. Are you a person of character? Are you a person that's going to pay back what you have borrowed, in a sense? Are you a person that is going to answer the phone when your banker, is wondering why you haven't made your payment yet, things like that.
Right.
So it's not a matter of, I think right now we have easy access to everything. We have easy access to resources like on TikTok and Reels on Instagram and things like that. It's not about what makes you look the best or what's the best hype, trend or whatever that looks the most attractive. Bankers don't care about that. Investors don't care about that. Is who are you when times get tough? Are you a person of your word, and are you going to pay back the banks? Are you going to pay back what you borrowed? Are you good to your employees? Are you financially responsible? Can you budget? Do you understand your business plan? Can you articulate your business plan? Things of that sort. So I think we still need to go back to some of the fundamental basics of how to run your business.
Yeah. I see a lot of uh, business plans whenever I was part of the investing community, and seeing
Yeah.
the vast difference in preparation. You can really tell who actually cares about their business and who actually knows their business inside and out, especially whenever they start talking about it. Um,
Yeah.
it's just a very different tone. You can find out pretty quick if they're passionate about what they do.
Yeah, yeah, and I love it. I love it when I get a business customer and they can tell me exactly what their expenses were, for last year. They can spit numbers on top of their head. They know, and going back to my previous comment on, leveraging your resources and being able to leverage your partners, like your banking partners and your CPAs and your tax advisors. That's great. But you, as a business owner, you need to be able to know what the ins and out of your business are, especially from a financial perspective.
Right,
People get into trouble, eventually because they don't know what's happening with their financials or maybe in the operations of the business. And you want to know, me as a mom, if I hire a babysitter, I'm gonna leverage her for help, right? But I need to know my baby. I need to know my daughter, right? What she
right,
eats, what she's allergic to, things like that. Kind of same thing as a business owner. Your business is your baby. You got to be able to know, how it reacts to certain things, to the market, just the ins and out of everything. And yes, use your partners for help and outsource as much as you can, absolutely. But always know your business first more than any other expert that you have out there helping you out.
right. It's definitely a really big point. You have to inspect what you expect. And I've been I've been kind of a business consultant in the past, referring to kind of a project where owner of a company took their eye off the ball, and they just kind of assumed that their partner was taking care of everything properly, putting money into the bank and all that stuff. But turns out there was money falling through the cracks over a period of a couple of years, and I'm talking a couple million. It's uh, it's definitely eye-opening. Some people do it on purpose and some don't. It's kind of up to you to decide that part. Um, but yeah, if you're not tracking part of your money, I mean, if you're not tracking all of your money, where every dime is going and what it's spent on, even down to taxes, it's you're definitely going to be running into a tougher time because people will take advantage of you. It's just only a
Yeah.
matter of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've seen it so many times, within the 10 years that I've done this. Very sad situations, where there's embezzlement involved. There was an employee that they trusted. The employee knew everything, their routing, their account numbers, everything. And the banks, the crazy part about it is your bank has solutions to this. We call it separation of duties. We have the technology, we have the services, the accounts to help you with that, in our treasury department. And I can't tell you how many times I've sat down with customers that are in the $1 million range, $10 million revenue and above. And it's like, hey, you as a business owner, you as the founder who founded this business don't know your account numbers, but your finance person does. And, it's almost like, we need a little bit of control there. We need a little bit of security, things of that sort, more a little bit of education as to why, that's important. And so, yeah, good point there.
Right. And then, or you can end up like that manager for Shohei Ohtani, who's gambling like so many million. I don't know if you heard about that.
No,
He
I
did,
didn't, but it doesn't surprise me.
yeah. Manager for a baseball player was stealing money. We don't know if he actually was stealing money and gambling on baseball, or if he knew his manager was stealing money and gambling on baseball, but it's kind of up in the air. But yeah, that's Shohei Ohtani. But he's actually probably the highest paid person in baseball right now.
Oh, okay.
So
So I probably need to
it
know
was
who that
it was
is.
it was just kind of a big deal in the baseball world. Um,
Yeah.
kind of starts putting question marks around him, but dude's like a really good guy, good heart. So a lot of people are looking past it. We'll kind of see, but yeah, no oversight, checking what's going on with your money is really important. I mean, even Shaq, he talks about hiring accountants that check his accountants, and then hiring accountants to check those accountants, or CPAs or lawyers. He just does that with all of his teams.
Yeah, yeah, that's an amazing strategy to have. And again, you also don't want to be too cynical to where you're not trusting the people that you hired. You hired them for a reason, but
Right, right,
yeah, but that's a great idea, having someone just overlook everything. There are people out there making a living. There are financial auditors out there, there are invoice auditors. I met one a few weeks ago that was introduced to me by a great COI of mine, a referral partner of mine, who
hmm
he does financial auditing, and so he's done it for plenty of years. And what he does is he audits invoices to his suppliers for business suppliers, just to make sure that they got charged what they were supposed to get charged. So yeah, absolutely. There is nothing out there that people have not tapped into as far as to help or make a business out of, So
right.
if you need help with the auditing piece, if you need help with tax strategies, if you need help with many different things that goes around, even client servicing, virtual assisting, all these things, anything that goes about making you successful as a business owner and being prepared, it's definitely out there.
Yeah. There's more resources now than there ever has been. Everything's pretty much on YouTube. I I've learned a lot on YouTube. I even learned how to tie a standard bow 15 minutes before a wedding is supposed to start. Um, it was my cousin's wedding, and there's like 8 of us in there in the changing room, all trying to tie our bow tie because
Yeah.
uh, I don't know, maid of honor. I couldn't remember which one she was, but she brought in all these bow ties we were supposed to put on. But yeah, it was on YouTube. It was pretty funny.
That's
Um, but
awesome.
in regards to kind of resources and things that people could use to understand business banking a little bit more, um,
Mhm.
besides, well, actually, even news resources, is there kind of a standard in that industry? Or is it more along the lines of you kind of have to do a lot of your own research? Because it's not information that's readily available, and it's not information that everyone really talks about.
Yeah, yeah. No, you brought up a good point. I here's the thing around your question. So, with me being in the industry, for over 10 years, I will tell you, there are departments that have been started within banking. There are people who have been hired. There are buckets that banking has. We call it a CRA bucket, which is a Community Reinvestment Act bucket. So it's a budget where banks get that they're like, hey, you're making a lot of money. And you're mostly in the areas where, you're going to bank people with a lot of money. So what you need to do is you need to expand to the communities that need the help. They need the resources. They need the startup loans, the startup opportunities. And so banks really have an agenda and they have a task to go and help those communities, um, for the longest time because I'm fluent in Spanish, and I do have a heart for helping communities, the Hispanic and Latinos, and also those who did not have resources growing up. I was constantly being tasked to go out there and financially educate, um, so that part I think is accessible and it's easy. Now, the challenge behind that is that when we do go out there and financially educate and when we provide those resources, then it's like, okay, then what? I find that a lot of the audience, they take really good notes, they take the information. And my hope is that, okay, I hope they took really good information from this and they apply it. But then it's like, okay, what are you doing with those resources? I just gave you the handbook. I gave you how to get there. Are you applying those? Are you then going and doing your research yourself? So it's a little bit of both. I think having access to those free resources. And I think you and I have met great people who are out there who really want to educate, who want to share their knowledge and level of expertise and what they've learned throughout their professions. But I can't tell you how many times, sometimes we put a lunch and learn on, or we try to tell people, hey, here's the secret sauce. And you would think there would be a line out the door, and usually there's not. So I think people need to make time out of their day to learn these things, to really educate themselves on what it's going to take for them to be successful as a business owner. And yes, you can rely on the YouTubes, and yes, you can scroll on TikTok and watch a 30-second video, but are you going to retain that information and apply it? So I think that's the biggest challenge is the after effect of what happens.
Yeah, for sure. Um,
Mhm.
Creating that action behind what is received, that's always the tougher part, and really adhering to a schedule, whether you're trying to improve your credit and now you're on a million payment schedules and you just got to keep everything in order, stay organized.
Exactly.
It's definitely a little challenge if you've never done it before or trying kind of a different practice. You could do it your entire life and still learn something new about finance. Um, it's it's ever evolving for sure. And I know you deal with a lot of laws changing and everything. When
Yeah.
what's what's kind of the last bigger law that got passed or is like putting a wedge in the industry?
That's a great question. So I think what's most impactful in the financial industry is so some laws do really take a huge ripple effect. Now, like for example, I'm going to throw out the CBD industry. In Texas, we're not a federal state that deals with marijuana, right? So
Right.
um, I think before COVID, there was a slight chance where we could bank CBD. There were some banks that were doing it as long as the percentage was very low. The THC percentages were very low. And that was great. I was calling on every CBD client that you can think of because I'm like, all right, here's my opportunity to bank them. But I think later on, there wasn't the security support behind it. So the banks were onboarding all these CBD clients, And then they're like, oh my gosh, we have to hire more of our compliance department. And they didn't want to spend so much money off of an industry that really was not trending positively, because there was all this talk about shutting down and are we going to vote yes? Are we going to legalize marijuana? Are we, so they were just like, you know what, we're not going to deal with it. So that's an example of how laws affect the banking industry. Now I know last year there were some that were approved where now banks are being audited as to who they lend to from a business standpoint. So HMDA was a regulation that was put in place back in 08, or
What's
I
it
think
called?
right after 08. HMDA, it's HMDA is the acronym.
Okay.
And if you do not know what it is, and those that are younger and didn't live through 2008, if you Google it, then you'll see the regulation behind that. So it pretty protects people. It's the Fair Housing Act. So if someone goes and applies for a mortgage, you can't discriminate me because I'm a woman or I'm a minority or things like that. So it's protection put in place. Same thing with the business loans. I believe it was about a year ago where it got approved, where banks are going to start to get audited as to how much do they lend to women-owned businesses, how much do they lend to Black-owned businesses, to Latino-owned businesses, things of that sort. How much are they lending to startup businesses? It's not necessarily a race thing, but are they lending out to are they giving a fair opportunity for people of incomes of different ranges?
Mhm.
And so that was game changing as well, because that kind of puts pressure on banks as to, okay, let's not just focus on these big whale of a deals, right? But let's also focus on
Right.
helping people that are just starting out and are within that middle range. So that's one that I could think of that was recent. As far as regulations that have been very tough, and I do want to take the platform to say this personally from what I've experienced, is that underwriting regulations change every day. One day they could say we're lending to hotels, we like the hotel industry, we think they're great, they're great prospects, from a risk standpoint we would love to lend to them because they're not risky. That's as an example. The next day we will get an email that says, hey, hotels on our be cautious list. So, if I get a prospect that's a hotel investor, just letting them know, hey, remember yesterday when I said I could lend to you? Well, today I think the chances there are kind of slim at this point. And I can't tell you how many times I have disappointed people because the rules change so much. But I think what's important there and what the solution is there, because I can kind of sense people thinking, well, then what's the point? If I'm in a certain industry and I'm a great qualified candidate, does that mean every bank's going to shut me down? That doesn't necessarily mean that. Um, it's being as prepared as possible so that when you do go to a bank and ask for capital or a business line of credit to help with cash flow, whatever that looks like, is be so financially organized, know where your credits, be credit healthy and all those good stuffs, to where the industry doesn't really take apart as to why we won't do business with you type thing. Um, it's just for those startups and who need a little bit more guidance and hand holding, then those are the ones that we see more of a red flag.
Yeah. Where do you see more hand-holding? Like in what part of the process?
I would say when a business is starting out, like they're barely starting out, and you can tell they haven't really taken the time to leverage the resources that they have or really search for resources. Um, because as I'm trying to explain and educate the process behind it and what it takes to get them qualified, again, I want to get them qualified and approved because that's how I get paid, right?
Right.
But sometimes I could feel the defenseness come up like, oh, well, I've been in business for something, 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 and you're telling me I can't because I haven't formalized my business. And it's like, no, because you've been transacting on your business under your personal name. And so to the IRS, or just, from a formalized standpoint, you're not transacting as a business, you're transacting as yourself. You might as well be a 1099 at that point. um, so it's really important to understand those concepts, and really important to, um, for me, what I love to do is being able to educate and explain how to get them there.
Right. Right. Um, do you do people have an issue creating business plans, business templates, stuff like that in order to present?
Yeah, you brought up a good one too. Yes, especially if I get like a SBA deal, which is the small business loans, which is someone who is very new in the industry and they want to grow it, or they want to buy a business, or they have been a franchise owner and they want to buy out the business, things like that. But yeah, I have come across a few that do not have a business plan intact. And there are free templates out there that a business owner can download and can use. I mean, I know one website that helps business owners get started is called Score, SCORE, and
That's
they, uh
that's the
do you
one I
know it?
recommend to everyone. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. They're great. Also, the SBA, the actual government website, man, they've got hundreds of categories,
Yep.
of how to help a business owner. So, and one of their segments is how to build a business plan, and you can actually download one, with different chapters, and you just fill in the blanks. Again, it's really taking time out of your day. And I get it, as an entrepreneur, you're on the clock 24/7. I get it. I've lived that life. I'm currently living it. I get it. It's very hard, but you got to push yourself beyond that comfort, right? You got to push yourself a little more to take the time to really invest in like putting your business plan together.
Yeah, for sure. I think it makes a much bigger impact so you can really sell your vision much more so than you can really explain it in a 30-second pitch. Because you don't always get the time to voice what you're doing,
Yeah.
and just because it's in your head doesn't mean it's really worth anything.
Yeah.
It has to be written down on paper and everything, and that's something that a lot of people fail to see, and that's a really big difference between like a mom and pop shop and someone who's actually readily available to scale the business.
Yeah.
Um, you see a lot more documentation within businesses that are scalable, have the foundation, have the wherewithal and how to do things. But
Exactly.
that all revolves around just having the wherewithal. A lot of it is having the wherewithal to do it and not be lazy about it, because
Yeah.
it's very tedious and it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the desire's there, right? The want is there. Sometimes what I find, the challenge to be the most, and then I also want to touch on one more thing because it came up when you were talking, that I think is very important. I think the desire is there and the want is there. I think sometimes people really do not know how. Where do I go? How do I put a business plan together? What do I say? So, to your point of the ideas in your head, well, we can't put it into play unless it's on paper somewhere, or unless we can put a visual behind it. I think people really have a hard time, articulating that and putting it on paper. And that's why, from when we first started, the live, is lean on your experts. If you're going to a banker to open a business account because you want to eventually qualify for a business loan, ask them, do you know anyone that can help me with my business plan? It's just a simple ask that can make so much of a difference. But to the point with the business plan, there are so many different channels and different resources where a business owner can get access to capital. And the primary one does not have to be a bank. If it could be through grants. There are hundreds of grants out there for business owners, whether they're just starting out, if they're in the technology space, if they're in roofing, if they're women owned, if they're Black owned, Latino owned, if they're first generation, whatever it is, there's many different categories out there where someone can look through and apply for business grants. And some of them range from 2,000 up to 50,000,
Yeah,
um, yeah. And so having the business plan down is so important and crucial, because when it comes to that time where, again, you have to sell yourself as to why this person's investing into my business, why this organization's investing into my business, why this bank should give me capital for my business, then yeah, that's where the business plan is so crucial to have.
for sure. Do you go to investor meetups where people are investing in startups or anything like that, hearing pitch
Yeah.
ideas? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I love those groups.
There's
I love those groups.
I got a I got a handful of people who are starting businesses, but one of them is doing a pitch down in Austin here soon. It's a tech company, trying to create something on the crypto side. It's pretty
Yeah.
interesting. It's always interesting to hear the different businesses and what people are working on, what people are pitching. There's just a lot out there. There's a lot of opportunity, and everyone sees opportunity very different.
Yeah.
Most I take it back. Most people don't even see opportunity, but the few that do see opportunity, all of them see opportunity different. It's really based on their personal experience with what they've done in the past,
Exactly.
um,
Yeah.
or just heard about it. But I think it's always good to really keep an open mind. But I do think it's just like Shark Tank, listening to all the different ideas, hearing the different deals, and usually there's like a scholarship involved with stuff like that, a scholarship or a grant or kind of like an investor sponsorship, a little bit,
Yeah.
whenever those events happen. Um, that's awesome. So you're partnering. I know we talked about your partners. I think what you've created with your partners is pretty smart. Um, Finding a partnership with someone who is not a competitor, but you guys have the same exact target market, I think
Mhm.
is one of the more powerful things you can do whenever you're starting a business or even if you're 10 or 20 years into your business.
Yeah.
Partner Partnering up with even competitors can be a really, really good thing. Some of my uh, best friends are direct competitors. Um, we share everything. We're super transparent. And because of that, I am light years ahead of a lot of people, just because I talk to my competitors. I understand their process and kind of see what they do, see how they do it. And in return, obviously, I keep my door open and I share everything, including my calendar process, everything down to the text
Mhm.
that gets sent as a little notification. Like there's so many different things you can do to create a partnership, but you're partnering mainly with it's CPAs, accountants, um, credit specialists. Who else are you partnering with mainly right now?
So you touched on a good point as far as the competitors. Other bankers have given me the best referrals, best clients to work with.
That's awesome.
Yeah, to your point, really anybody could be a good partner. I really don't shy away from who's partnering up with me. There are great insurance agents that have partnered with me. Uh, Nonprofit leaders have been absolutely great. You know, um, Sometimes, to my point, other bankers. And so I have a good network of bankers that if I'm not able to help you with my bank because of our restrictions or underwriting policies, whatever that looks like, I'm not just going to tell you a no. If you're open and receptive, I will introduce you to someone else. Um, so it just depends, like when I'm out networking, who I'm meeting. Heck, even a Mary Kay consultant can be the best referral partner because they know everybody. Those people are
Right.
not shy to go knock on doors, and and especially in smaller towns, they know everybody and who's anybody. But for me, it's just being open-minded and receptive and humble enough to say, okay, I'm going to be open to the one-on-one with this person. Grab a cup of coffee for this person, get to learn their background. Get a quick phone call just to hear what their experience is, who they know.
Hmm.
Because I will tell you, in banking, everything's backwards. So you would think that someone who's flashy with their Louis Vuitton and walking in with their red bottoms, and that they're going to be the best qualified client. But that's not necessarily true. It's usually the ones that you don't know have the potential there. I remember when I first started banking, and I was on the servicing side of things. There was a pig farmer that would walk into the bank, and he was kind of crazy looking. He had a very wild personality. You kind of have to have one to deal
Be
with,
a pig farmer. Yeah.
to be a big pig farmer, right? And a lot of people didn't want to service him and talk to him, and and kind of hear what he had to say. And just kind of, again, going to my humble beginnings and the way that my parents raised me, and everything, I was always there to help him. And come to find out, he inherited a huge trust fund. um, and as a pig farmer himself, he made a good amount of money. So he inherited about 15 to 20 million dollars. And I was able to set him up with one of our wealth advisors. And he was a great opportunity, great client overall. So again,
Yeah.
don't judge a book by its cover. Don't go based off of how many followers a person has. If they're walking in with the red bottoms, you really don't know people's situations and who they are behind the scenes and what they're really about.
Yeah. Um, Completely agree. Anytime I see a really expensive car, I always wonder how much is left on it. Um,
Yeah.
like that's just kind of what goes through my head. But yeah, there's a lot to really consider whenever you're going after funding and stuff like that. What are like normal amounts for kind of lines of credit or loans whenever you're a small business just starting out? What's a normal amount?
Yeah. That's,
Obviously, it'll depend on the
yeah.
industry and the business and everything.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Because a lot of the main question that I get asked, especially in the small business segment, is how much do I qualify for? So here's basically a guideline for every business owner when they're asking for capital. Always shoot for 15% of your annual revenue, you know. So you never want to go above that threshold. Now, there are instances where you could qualify for more or you could ask for more if there's equipment involved. So if I am in the trucking industry and, I want another truck because I'm expanding, I'm hiring more employees, whatever that looks like. Obviously, there's some collateral there for the bank. So we're not going to go based completely off of annual revenue. So, that situation changes. So that's just an example. But rule of thumb is don't shoot more than 15% more of your annual revenue. I think that's a very conservative number. And your banker will come back and tell you, hey, I looked at your financials and you could qualify for more,
Yeah.
lean on that. But I think it's always smart to ask for a conservative number, and that just demonstrates that you're not just shooting for the stars and asking for capital, which could raise a red flag to your banker. If I make, let's say, 500,000 a year in revenue, and I go to the bank and ask for a loan for 10 million, that's the margins there just don't make sense. You know what I mean? Unless you have investors on that are going to guarantee the loan, that's very different.
Yeah.
And
A
that is
personal guarantee. Yeah.
a, yeah, a personal guarantee. And that's another thing too, is that, with people building their business credit and formalizing their businesses, they think, oh, I can take whatever is under my personal history away from it No, it doesn't happen that way. We're still going to have to check, personal credit. We're still going to have to go back and make sure there weren't any bankruptcies, repos, that sort. So, yeah. So, again, to your point, 15% of annual revenue. Um, or you can have some good personal guarantors, some good investors on board. The bank is open to that. And then also make sure that from a personal standpoint, your credit healthy and that you've got your financials organized as well.
Having everything organized is super, super important. Hopefully, by that time, you have an accountant or a CPA that can
Yeah,
really hand over half the stuff that you probably need. I mean,
yeah,
outside of like a business plan template and everything. Um, but so once you get the loan, you start paying it back. Is it so obviously it depends on the deal how much you would pay it back, the amortization schedule based on the interest of everything. What are the differences and kind of interest rates? How does that compare to where it was during 2020 and 2021?
yeah, man. Money is expensive now.
Yeah, for sure.
Money is expensive now. That's why the rates are high. That's why we've seen some of the banks, like the SBB out in California, how it closed down, things of that sort. We've seen some financial institutions, brokers, mortgage brokers in the residential side as well. Money is super expensive. And so we got to make a good spread there. The bank makes money off of the interest rates that are being priced, loan fees, and things of that sort. And so for the banks, it's very expensive for us to go purchase treasuries, go to the Fed and purchase money, and be able to lend it. And so, what the banks have tried to do is gather more deposits, so more bank clients, right? Because then money is a lot cheaper in that aspect. So, but how has it changed? I mean, we've seen through COVID, interest rates were as low as 2 to 3, 2 to 3%, 4%.
Yep.
Money was super cheap back then, and the government was giving away free money like crazy. That's what triggered the CARES Act, the PPP loans. And so when we had this shutdown, it put a strain on our economic cycle. And so people were not out and about, making all the checks and balances work within the market. And so the government thought, okay, we're going to give this free money out, kind of level out from a financial spectrum where we're at as a country. And what happened was people didn't realize we had to pay it back somehow, whether through tax, whether years later through interest rates,
Yep.
those who invested into real estate back then. And I'll tell you, everybody was a realtor now all of a sudden. And then now when things started to tighten up a little bit more, we started to see just a decrease of success, businesses closing, um, real estate investors really pulling back and not as aggressive as they used to be. So yeah, just the most simplest terms I can put it is just money is super expensive right now. So we've seen it with inflation, we've seen it with the banks, and so there's a high demand for capital. It's just a matter of trying to get those individuals, those businesses approved.
Right. Just find the right deals so you can create a win-win situation, one for the consumer, one for the bank.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think, I like that you said that comment because, again, I want to get everybody approved. The thing is, I'm not going to put a client in a very hostile situation financially where 5 years down the road, their business is closing down because they didn't make the best financial decision at that point. So
Mhm.
if the interest rate is going to put them in a bad spot, if they're going to be living paycheck to paycheck, if they're as a business owner going to have to make a decision as to, man, I have to let go of these employees to be able to make this loan payment, then that's not the best time for you to ask for capital. That's not the best time for you to go to a bank and, ask for a loan, especially of how high the interest rates are now. So there's a part of being honest and being transparent with my clients, that I like to use, because I'm not going to put you in a situation where later on you're going to say it's because of you that my business closed, or I want to make sure you succeed, because if you grow, you're going to bring me more opportunities. We both win, and really, I just want to see them thrive. Back to my original story of the taco truck that ended up being that started off at their house taco truck. They now have 5 locations throughout DFW, and they're doing phenomenally well. They own 2 of those locations free and clear. And they listened to the advice. They hired the right people, and at the time it was very hard to tell them, hey, I can't give you a loan, but let's get you started on a plan where eventually you'll get there. And it took them about 2 to 3, 4 years, and then COVID happened, and it shook their world. But they had enough liquidity to push through those times, and they're doing amazingly well now.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. I wonder what their transition was. There's a lot of restaurants that went from like dine in to takeout and delivery and all that stuff. I've always been curious about how that transition for restaurants or retail eateries or bakeries.
Yeah,
Um, but no, that success story is pretty damn cool. And it was, I'm guessing it's just like a family business.
yeah, it was a
Yeah,
family business. It was a husband and a wife who worked in corporate for a long time. They worked in a franchise. And so they came up with a neat concept. Their recipe was different. It was passed down by generations.
yeah,
And they're like, we're going to make some money off of this. And they've done great. And again, they own several locations throughout DFW. And, for privacy reasons, I can't say who they are.
yeah, for
But,
sure. Get it.
there are many people that I know that go there very often. And so when I go meet with the owners, it's just inspiring to me to see the growth, and to be able to make a difference in that way is probably why I've stuck with banking as long as I have,
Right.
so it's good.
It's a pretty high impact activity
Yeah.
to pursue. So I definitely understand the level of fulfillment as dreams kind of you see dreams start happening, which is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Especially whenever you're changing the lives of their kids and stuff like that. That's definitely a special moment being able to see that.
Mhm.
Um, so you just started somewhere else. I know we kind of talked about it. You've been in business banking for a long time. Do you plan on being in business banking for a long time?
Yeah, banking is like, just like I said, they change their policies and their regulations every day. Um, Life, I've learned with having a daughter and, just my own personal story and everything, you never know what life might throw at you, so I would love to say yes. And, the clients that I've serviced and the people that I've connected with, I wish I could bring all of them with me in every phase of my career. And, but unfortunately, it just doesn't happen that way sometimes,
Right,
um, but yes, I would love to be in this segment for as long as I can. I have dreams myself of opening my own bank eventually. Those are big dreams. And so I think I'm at the right place at the right time right now. And, being in business lending and commercial lending and learning as much as I can, even with the way the market is right now. I think it's only going to help and build, my expertise and my knowledge. So when the opportunity for that big dream comes into play, then I can say, yes, I can do this now. And I've already built a good business of good referral networks, a good book of
right.
business and things of that sort. But I love banking. I love what I do. I love working with small business owners. I wish I had more time to be able to sit and on calls all day. I think the challenge now is just being able to reach everyone that needs the help. But but that's why it's important for us to have like these live streams and partner with people like you, Ryan, to where we can reach more people and hopefully they're able to take this information and apply it themselves.
Right. I
Yeah.
think I've definitely learned more from other people than I have myself. I'm kind of
Yeah.
a hermit, so hearing stuff like this and it going to YouTube because you can learn everything on YouTube. I'm kidding. But no, no, I appreciate the compliment. It's definitely a hustle, grind, and figure out where to kind of pour your energy and time into.
Yeah.
You meet a lot of different people, a lot of different partnerships, and just because that person is a good person doesn't mean that it's going to be a good fit. You guys just
Yeah.
might be at different points in the career, might just not be the best partnership because of communication style, because of product services, don't really mingle that well together. It all depends, but there's a lot of opportunity and community whenever
Mm.
you're building those partnerships, and that's one thing I think you're pretty darn good at. And we've even spoken before. I know the people on the stream probably don't know that, but we had a little Q&A about loans a while back. How long ago was that? Maybe a year? No, six
No.
months.
Yeah.
About
About
6
6
months
months.
ago.
Yep.
I was trying to remember. But yeah, no, it's always been a pleasure chatting with you. I think I think the landscape of business loans and getting capital is going
Mhm.
to keep changing because the crowdfunding wasn't as popular as it was, or crowdfund crowdfunding is more popular now than it was like 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
there's going to be a lot of different ways to start a business, but either bootstrapping or get a loan. Those are like the two most popular options.
Mhm.
It's kind of hard to do anything else or just assume that you'll gain success from the get-go.
Yeah.
Do people I do have a question.
Yeah.
Whenever people are getting loans, do you find existing businesses having more trouble getting loans or new companies trying to get loans?
That's a great question. It's a little bit of both. So, and this is just the way my brain works. So I'm sorry I have to
Let's hear
explain
it.
this way. I'm just going off of what
Yeah,
experiences, right?
for sure.
So for example, there's an existing business that has trended positively in cash flow, but during COVID, they had some losses, and so obviously it's a good excuse. COVID is a good excuse as to why you probably had some losses as a business owner. But I think what banks are starting to see is, okay, what happened after COVID? And the underwriters are like, what happened after COVID? What happened after the fact? Are you a sustainable business even after COVID? Um, how long do we use COVID as an excuse from a financial standpoint that, are you a business that's going to thrive or not? So it was almost like there was a reset during COVID. And so it was almost like some businesses almost started over, with just their financial track record and things of that sort. And so, to answer your question right now, I think that's the biggest challenge with existing businesses. So, I think banks are starting to like more of the startup, are starting to like more of, hey, I've been a W 2 employee for 15 years, making over six figures or close to 200. And now I want to be able to buy into this franchise. I've been a general manager. Now I want to be an owner. I see a business for sale at an X amount of dollars. I want to be able to buy that business. I have a good business plan. I have projections. I have experience in this field. My credit's great. We're starting to lean more towards, hey, that makes sense as to why we want to be behind that, from a capital standpoint.
Right.
Now, existing businesses, I think, have gone through that reset, have needed a little bit more help. And so they've been through a phase of stretching from a financial standpoint. So it's a little harder. But it can definitely be done if you have good collateral in place, if you have a good history of paying back the banks on time, things of that sort. But yeah, I hope that answered your question.
No, you're good. Yeah, no, it definitely did. I think I don't know. I would just always kind of curious what's better because, like, kind of give you an example.
Yeah.
I was talking to a realtor down in Austin, and he said that there's more bank or more houses that are decreasing their price compared to how many new houses are going on the market. So there's more houses coming down in prices compared to houses coming onto the market. So I
Mhm.
thought that was kind of an interesting statistic or kind of fact that kind of transitioning, especially during 2024 year of the politics where nobody knows kind of which way things are going to sway,
Yeah.
and we always have a good November, December, or right
Mm.
after election. Um, I mean, at least generally speaking, if you're not freaking out about
Yeah.
something dumb, but the economy goes back to normal towards the
Yeah.
end of the year.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everyone's kind of on this standstill. Everyone's just waiting to see what happens. But yes, as far as like the real estate stuff, and we do commercial real estate investing. We do real estate investing deals. We have a great one for an individual that wants to do some flips, on the side. And so the banks are still lending. There's still
mhm,
some movement there. It's just expensive right now. And
right.
so we see a lot of investors really stop or are more hesitant on that route. And so that makes sense as to why their existing inventory is, they're trying to push it out and sell it as much as they can. Um, it's more expensive to start from the ground up.
I know with banks, they're more likely to fund a franchise. And we talked about kind of the down payment and how that actually works.
Mhm.
So if someone wants to go buy a Chick-fil-A franchise and it's 250,000, um, so you would have to either get 80 or 90% of that from the bank, and then the bank kind of requires you to either get that 20 to 10% that's remaining out of your
Correct.
own out of your own pocket or for a personal guarantee.
Yeah, correct. And sometimes the SBA will do 100% financing. It just depends if it's a lot less riskier deal. And so, but yes, and the way that that can be negotiated too. So again, if you're a W-2 employee, you want to go and buy, you're a general manager of a Chick-fil-A and you want to go buy the location you're working at and you qualify for their franchising, program. So what you can do is you can almost work out a deal with the one who's selling you the business, to where they come up with the 10% of down payment. So there could be a negotiation there. And then there are some instances, let's say, like with owner occupied real estate. So if I'm going to own the real estate that I'm investing in, and I've got some tenants lined up with the commercial real estate property that I'm purchasing, then the bank will do 100% financing on that on the SBA side of it. So there's many different programs out there, many different options. I would say just find yourself a good solid bank that has those endless options. Some of the bigger banks, I don't want to put them out there, but I think we know who they are. The blues and the oranges and the reds out there. They won't really take the time with the small to mid size businesses. They're busy trying to book loans for the big whales, the large corporations.
Right.
And so they're a lot more conservative in that sense. And then you've got community banks, which I've worked at as well, who have certain different types of appetites. So they'll find certain industries or certain deals a lot more riskier. So I think the key thing here is being able to find a bank that's going to work with you and that have those different programs available.
For sure. Do you
Mhm.
usually do brick and mortar businesses around DFW? Like that's where you kind of focus? Because I know there might be territories involved sometimes in banking.
Yeah, I cover all DFW. So if someone calls me in Arlington, I'm in Arlington. If someone's out in Fort Worth, I go visit them in Fort Worth. And then I just expanded to Greenville and Tyler. So, which a lot of bankers have not touched, as far as networking and connecting out here. So there's a lot of opportunity. So,
That's awesome. Well,
mhm.
good luck in those new areas for sure.
Thank
We've
you.
definitely gone way past an hour. Um,
We have,
but
we sure have.
yeah, we'll close it off. We can get on with our day. I know it's like 12:30 also. I think
Yeah,
you
it's
have a
lunchtime.
call. Yeah. Um, But, man, it was definitely a pleasure finally having you on here. We'll definitely
Thank
have
you.
you on here again. I know you're still getting a little settled and you have a couple of projects on your hands, so definitely good luck with all of that. I'm excited for you, excited for your future, and can't wait to have you back on here and kind of hear about all the changes and all the things going on in your life.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate it. And, it's always an honor to share what I know so far. And yeah, I'd be happy to come back and share some of those changes. As we know, banking is changing every day. So it's a subject with a lot to talk about, a lot of key
Yeah.
points to talk about.
Absolutely. And if
Yeah.
someone wanted to get in touch with you, do you have an email, Facebook, Instagram that you want to tag or a website?
Yes, so I'm streaming this on my Facebook, and then I will comment how people could get in touch with me. Um, and you're happy to share, I'll share my business card with you so you can post it.
Got it.
Yeah, but I mean, people can find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook. If I haven't seen your message, it's probably sitting in spam. So, just send me another message. But I try to get back as soon as possible to everyone. But LinkedIn as well, you can see my experience and some of the networks that I'm involved with. So, I am happy to connect.
What network are you involved with here in DFW?
Man, there is a list.
Yeah,
There's a long list of networks. I sat on the board of a chamber in my past. I just got so busy that I couldn't serve, 100%. But
gotcha.
there are
Yep.
some great nonprofits that I partner with. So if anyone is needing to get connected or in needing resources or help or just need help, getting plugged in within different various networks, be happy to give someone some advice and connect them.
Heck yeah. That's awesome. Well, Evelyn, always a pleasure. We'll definitely chat again in the future. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to plug in?
No, I think we're good. I think everyone's ready for some lunch. Talking about
Right.
tacos, now I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right. Right. Awesome. And also, I appreciate you rolling with the punches on the camera issues, audio issues, but I'm glad we're still able to keep going and keep pulling through.
There you go. We push
Awesome.
through. All right. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. Good seeing you. Talk to you again.
Same here. Bye.
Bye.